Again, Jason here for the love of tractors. Trying a different location, different setup today. So behind me is that case of 164th, a lot of chasers and things like that, pullers, stuff like that back there. I've got videos on them if you want to see them. Just look back through the channel and check them out. So this is kind of another vloggy, podcasty type thing, and I'm going to talk about something that uh, I get questions on almost daily, and that's fine. I'm always glad to help, of course. But that's 3D printing and farm toys, and so I'm just going to talk about what I've learned. Um, 3D printing farm toys. I started 3D printing farm toys in 2014, actually. So my first 3D printer was a DaVinci, and it was a filament type printer, and it was rough. It sucked. Um, so it was billed as an easy to use kind of plug and play type 3D printer. There's no such thing. Let me just tell you, after 10 years of doing this, that doesn't exist. Uh, the problem with the DaVinci, and I don't even know if they sell those anymore, and if the problem with the DaVinci was that you really couldn't adjust your settings too much. You could adjust your layer height a little bit, but things like feed rate and temperature, nozzle temperature, things like that were pretty much static. And then you had to use their proprietary filament, their spool. Um, and it turns out they wanted you to. You actually didn't have to, but you got a little better results if you did. Now, of course, there were hacks and tips and tricks and all sorts of things you could do to the machine to get it a little more usable, get a little more detail out of it. But ultimately, the quality on it was pretty terrible. Um, but that wasn't discouraging to me for a couple reasons. Ultimately, what that machine ended up being was just a test printer. And one of the problems I really struggled with when I was starting 3D printing was getting things scaled correctly, just getting them to look just right. And um, Shapeways was still in business at the time, and you could upload something to Shapeways and then order it from them if you needed higher detail, better quality, things like that. And so that's what I did a lot of times is I would design my things on Google SketchUp, and which is also not really a 3D printing program, but it was free and it was somewhat easy to use, and I was able to make it work. Um, and then I would upload them to Shapeways for my final product. But the DaVinci it allowed me to scale them, make sure I got everything correct size wise. So that wasn't a failure, and ultimately it got me into 3D printing, which got me to where I am today in this hobby. Honestly, a lot to do with this channel and all the other fun stuff that's come along with it. Um, so while my first while my first 3D printer was kind of junk, we moved on. So I used that printer for a while, and then finally it kind of got to the point where I got good enough and could scale things correctly without it, where it just kind of set by the wayside. In fact, it's still sitting over on in the corner here, never to be used again, I'm sure. Um, and I was just designing things and sending them to Shapeways to have printed. Well, a few years ago, and I say a few, it's been, I don't know, 5, 6, pre-pandemic for sure. Resin home 3D printing kind of became a thing. Resin 3D printing allows you exceptional detail and things like these. Let me see if I can get this up to the camera. This is a palette. I'm sorry, it's not going to show up too well. I'll have to work on the lighting here, guys, in the future. And again, as I said in the previous podcast, we're working on things. We're getting things sorted out. We'll get them though. But you can see the palette detail and things like that. This is a box. This is a palette with a bunch of different boxes on it. Now, I want this to be a box of farm toys. Maybe we got a pallet of farm toys in the shop, something like that. So I'll paint this up, and then I'm going to try to figure out decals or something like, Ertl or whatever to put on the side of them, like their farm toys. Anyway, So with resin printing, it was just an instant jump in quality. Now, the problem with resin printing is it is messy, and the resin uncured is not good for you. And trust me, I know this firsthand. I thought I was taking all the precautions I needed. Nitrile gloves. I was wearing one of those, I call them COVID masks, whatever those things are. Turns out that's not enough. Nitrile gloves are fine, but I put on long sleeves and I wear a respirator. You just don't want that stuff in your system. It's not good for you. Now, of course, once the print is done, cleaned, and has that final cure, you're good. You can handle it. This is resin. I can touch it all day long. It's not going to hurt me. Um, so that was kind of my next step. However, the filament type printers, in the meantime, kept getting better and better and better. And now I actually run some Creality filament type printers as well, and I use those mainly for things like our houses, our sheds, our shops, our barns, just other sort of structural things that I want to look nice, but they don't have to have the insane level of detail that resin offers. And so that kind of has got me going through there. Now, here's the thing, and I'm trying to say this stuff as if some of you out there listening are interested in getting a 3D printer, because that's my ultimate goal, is to help you guys with whatever you want to do in this hobby. And the great thing about filament printers is that has none of that toxicity that resin has. You can the filament, as I drop this on the ground, the filament, it kind of looks like, it reminds me of weed eater twine is what it looks like. It's just a plastic string basically, and you can touch it all you want. It's not going to hurt you. It's super safe to use. But again, I think you do sacrifice a little detail, even with the really great filament printers there are today. However, you can still get some very great items with a filament printer. So, if you're getting started today, I might push it towards that filament printer just to kind of get your feet wet. Now, a word of caution: no matter which way you go, filament or resin, there's a lot of tinkering involved. They're just 3D printing is not just a plug and play, hit go, neat part comes out, and you're done. There's always adjustments to be made. There's always leveling. There's always adjusting the temperature of the nozzle on a filament. On the resin, you've got to get your settings just right, your exposure settings, because how the resin printers work versus a filament printer. I'm sure you've seen the filament printer has a nozzle on a bed, and it just, it builds up this, your plastic. It's melting it and it building it up. The resin printer shoots up light from a screen, and your build plate's on top, and it just, a layer at a time, builds that up. Well, what has to happen is you have to have supports to support things. I'll use this ladder, for example. So, like, let's say we're going to print this ladder like this. We've got to have supports holding up these parts to the print bed. And when that's done, you have to clean those off, either with your hands, with gloves on, or little snippers, things like that. Hobby knife, whatever it works. Sometimes, if you can get your settings just right, you can just pull them right off. And that does happen. But it can be tricky, and you can break parts doing it. Trust me, I know. Anyway. So there's always tinkering and things like, you don't just hit print and you have a nice, clean new part ready to go. You still have to do a lot of post-processing. And one of the how-to videos I want to do down the road is on post-processing a 3D print. So I think it's just better to show than it is to do. And you might be wondering, like, well, how come I'm not showing you guys 3D printing and stuff like that right now? Well, depending on your part, depending on your printer, what I show you is really not going to make a difference. And there are millions of videos on how to level printers. Every printer is a little different. Every part you do might be a little different. So just things to keep in mind. Anyway, that's kind of the basics. Now, I was showing you this for a reason, but I'm I'm kind of concerned that we're not going to have the light to do this. So let me try. I do have a flashlight here. So this is off my newest printer. Newest printer is an 8K printer. So higher resolution, and they make even higher resolutions than this now. But these are steps for a John Deere tractor, specifically for a 4020. And you can see it's even got like the anti-slip ridges on there. It's got the bolt details on where it mounts and all of that on the side to bolt details, all of that stuff. This stuff, well, I know it's not showing up too great on that camera. This stuff just wouldn't show up this nice on my original resin printer. These new 8Ks are incredible. And so incredible, in fact, I can print this in 1/64 scale with all of this detail. So it's pretty awesome. In fact, these were first done in 1/64 scale, and then my dad said, "You didn't happen to have any steps for a John Deere 4020, do you?" And I said, "Well, give me, I'll get you some by morning." So that's how that worked out. Anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at with 3D printing. Constantly churning out new product. For shows and things like that. I know I keep saying I'm going to get the website back up. I really will, guys. I promise. It's just life is it's busier than I thought it would be. I really hoped by now. I mean, my gosh, I'm recording this not too long before Labor Day. I'm probably going to post it after Labor Day. I'd really hoped my life had kind of settled in a little bit and I could kind of get back to the website and things like that. But for now, you're just going to have to see me out at the farm toy shows to get our parts. We have a lot of parts. I think we're over 100 parts. And now, by the national show, I'm going to have some detail kits for tractors, and I think I'm probably adding about 30 new parts. So we're gonna have a lot of parts for your displays, for your tractors, for things like that. By the time we get to Dubuque, which is coming quicker than you think. Labor Day is, like I said, I'm recording this before Labor Day. It's this weekend. That means Dubuque and National Show, 2 months away. Actually, the Dubuque show starts on Halloween. Spooky. It's going to be fun, though. It's going to be so much fun. I don't know. I'm trying to decide, are we dressing up for the show? I don't know. Well, anyway. All right. That might be silly, but it might be fun, too. That's that. maybe we should do a thing. Let me think on that. Maybe I'll do a thing. Like, you come to the Dubuque show in a costume and get, $5 off of a purchase over $50 or something. I don't know. We'll come up. Maybe we'll come up with something like that. That might be kind of fun. I don't know. Just always looking for ways to have fun and spice it up. I'm really excited about that show. So anyway, that's kind of the basics of 3D printing. Like I said, the other stuff, the post-processing of 3D printing, things like that, I want to show you in its own separate video. It's just easier to show than to just kind of tell you and talk here. And then I realize that those of you that listen to this podcast on your phones without the video, without the YouTube video, I realize that's going to make it a little, maybe won't translate so well, but you can always come to the YouTube video for reference. So a few other things I was going to talk about, new toy stuff. It looks like the Farm Progress Show. Do they still call it the Farm Progress Show, or is it just the Farm Show now? All the tractors just say Farm Show, but Farm Progress Show, right? Looks like those tractors are hitting this week, which it should. The Farm Progress Show is going on. They look awesome. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but one of the disappointing things, and not disappointing, just the way it is, it looks like the chasers of the Case IH Combine and the John Deere track tractor are pretty pricey. I was a little disappointed. I was hoping they'd be like $150 or so. Looks like they're like $250 is what the market's gonna be on those for a while. We'll see. I'm definitely gonna get that John Deere chaser, the 8 RT 400 or whatever it is. I'm definitely getting that, but I may have to hold off on the IH Combine chaser, and then just hope I can chase one of those down in the future. Just the way it goes sometimes. Anyway, and then the 8400s are coming quick, and I'm excited about that. And I think they're going to be incredible. I can't wait to get my hands on one. We've seen them and we saw the prototypes, and I've posted footage of those, or I've posted pictures of those at least. So we'll see how it goes, but pretty pumped about that anyway. I don't know, this might be a short 15-minute quick podcast. Um, we'll get back to some full length and regular style soon, I promise. I hope so anyway. And then I would like to hear down below, if you've made it to this 15-minute mark, what topics do you want me to cover in the podcast? So, keeping in mind I'm going to do how-to videos, and those will be separate from the podcast. So we'll just do how-to videos on the channel like a normal video pretty soon. But as far as podcast topics, what would you like to hear? What would you like me to talk about? One of the things I kind of want to talk about is inflation of farm toy prices. And I've talked about the farm toy market in the not too distant past, but I want to compare older tractors of similar models to newer tractors. Like, I'm kind of thinking, like, I'm sitting here looking at a 1/16 scale 8850, and I'm thinking of how amazing that would be to do the 64 scale old one versus the new one. And what I would do is compare how many tooling parts it took to see, to make those tractors, because the newer one's a little nicer detailed. It's actually in scale compared to the old one. Things like that, plus clear cab glass, all that sort of thing. And then just kind of see if we can't figure it out or math it out, how much tractors have really gone up in price. Because this is going to sound crazy, and some of you are going to really disagree with me. I don't think they've gone up as much as we think they've gone up, if that makes sense. Obviously, the price of tractors is high. I was just telling you about $250 Chaser tractors, and most four-wheel drives today are going to run you in the neighborhood of $20 to $30. And if it's green, if it's a John Deere, it's going to be $30. So, that's just kind of where things are at. But, how does that compare to the 90s, the 80s, so on and so forth? And so I really kind of want to sit down and do my research and figure that out. That's a topic I'm kind of working on and putting pen to paper on, and we'll see what happens with that. So anyway, guys, I've got to do it for this one. I'm rambling on enough. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And like I said, leave topic ideas down below in the comments. Have an awesome day. Happy tractor hunting.